After the confrontation with Muzayan and the exposure of Haydar's actions, the story enters a quieter, more insidious phase. The violence does not escalate immediately. Instead, it recedes, leaving behind a vacuum filled with tension, uncertainty, and unspoken consequence. This phase is not defined by what happens, but by what fails to resolve. The danger no longer arrives loudly, it lingers. For Merkin, survival does not feel victorious, it feels conditional. In the days that follow, she moves through the world with an unfamiliar detachment. Her body continues its routines, waking, eating, speaking, but her mind lags behind, processing events that refuse to organize themselves into closure. She has survived her father's betrayal, a kidnapping, a knife raised in the name of love, and the collapse of family illusions, yet there is no moment of relief. Survival, she realizes, is not an endpoint, it is a state. It senses this before Merkin names it. He watches her closely, noticing how her responses grow slower, how her gaze lingers too long on nothing in particular. He does not push her to speak. He understands that words will come only when the shock loosens its grip. Instead, he stays present. Presence now is his language. This marks a significant transformation in Ates himself. Once, he responded to threat with dominance, to uncertainty with control. Now, restraint defines him. He no longer believes that force alone guarantees safety. He has seen too clearly how violence multiplies rather than ends conflict. His instinct is no longer to confront immediately, but to contain, to stabilize, to protect without provoking further escalation. Yet restraint does not mean passivity. Ates becomes increasingly aware that the silence surrounding them is not accidental, it is engineered. Decisions are being made elsewhere, out of sight, and the consequences of those decisions seep slowly into daily life. The absence of immediate retaliation does not reassure him, it alarms him. He understands that this kind of quiet often precedes something far more calculated. Nazir's presence, though physically distant, grows heavier in Ates' mind. He senses Nazir not through action, but through influence, the way conversations end prematurely, the way people hesitate before speaking openly, the way alliances subtly realign. Nazir does not need to appear to exert control. His power lies in anticipation. Merkin feels this shift as well, though she experiences it differently. Where Ates analyzes patterns, Merkin absorbs atmosphere. She feels the mansion grow heavier, more restrained. Doors feel more final when they close. Silence feels watchful rather than peaceful. She becomes acutely aware of how little space there is for honesty in a world governed by fear. This awareness deepens her exhaustion. Sleep offers little refuge. Dreams, when they come, are fragmented images without narrative, fear without cause. She wakes often, disoriented, unsure whether the threat exists outside her body or within it. Ates is always there when she wakes, grounding her in the present through quiet reassurance. They speak little during these moments. Words feel insufficient. What they share is endurance. Their relationship, already altered by shared danger, evolves further. Love, for them, is no longer expressive or idealized. It is practical, deliberate, chosen repeatedly in small acts of care. It does not promise safety. He offers constancy. Merkin does not ask for certainty. She accepts presence. Outside their private space, the household attempts to resume normal life, but normalcy proves elusive. Routine continues, meals prepared, conversations exchanged, but everything feels provisional. People speak carefully, reveal less, observe more. Trust, once assumed, now feels negotiated. The older generation responds to this atmosphere with denial. Haydar refuses to acknowledge the depth of what he has lost. He frames Merkin's distance as temporary, her defiance as emotional confusion. He tells himself that control can be restored, that loyalty can be enforced with time. Yet beneath this certainty lies fear, a fear he cannot name without admitting weakness. He becomes more guarded, more defensive. His movements are calculated, his words sharpen. The man who once believed himself untouchable now feels the edges closing in, even as he refuses to admit it. The knowledge that Merkin stands outside his control unsettles him more than any external threat. Muzayan, by contrast, is forced into confrontation with herself. The knife incident leaves her shaken, stripped of certainty. She cannot unsee the reflection of Haydar in her own actions. The justification she relied on that violence was an expression of love no longer holds when mirrored back at her. She withdraws, not in remorse, but in confusion. Her identity as protector fractures. This internal collapse does not resolve her pain. It destabilizes it. Meanwhile, Nazir remains silent. This silence is not absence. It is dominance exercised through patience. He observes how fear reshapes behavior, how restraint creates dependency. He understands that the longer tension remains unresolved, the more people adjust themselves around it. Power, he knows, does not always require action. Sometimes it requires waiting. Yates grows increasingly aware that time itself has become a weapon. He begins to prepare not for immediate confrontation, but for inevitability. Preparation now is not about force. It is about positioning. He reassesses alliances, evaluates loyalties, and measures risk with new precision. The question is no longer how to defeat an enemy, but how to prevent collapse when conflict finally surfaces. Merkin becomes part of this preparation, though not as a strategist. She grounds Yates in consequence. She reminds him, sometimes without words, that survival without humanity is hollow. Her refusal to compromise her conscience becomes a quiet counterbalance to the world around them. This dynamic reshapes Yates' understanding of strength. He begins to see that protection does not require domination. It requires boundary. His stand against Muzayan was not a moment of aggression, but of definition. He claimed responsibility without claiming ownership. He defended Merkin without reducing her to something that needed saving. This distinction matters. As days pass, the sense of inevitability grows. Everyone feels it, though no one names it. The silence cannot hold forever. The systems built on fear and secrecy always demand reinforcement. When reinforcement fails, collapse follows. The story does not rush toward this collapse. It approaches it deliberately, allowing tension to thicken rather than explode. The danger is no longer sudden. It is ambient. Merkin understands now that safety, as she once knew it, no longer exists. What exists instead is choice. The choice to remain silent or to speak, to submit or to resist, to preserve comfort or to preserve integrity. She chooses integrity, even when it costs her peace. By the end of this movement, nothing has resolved. No villain is defeated. No justice is delivered. And yet, the transformation is undeniable. Merkin is no longer the daughter defined by loyalty. Yates is no longer the man defined by force. Haydar and Muzayan are no longer unquestioned authorities. Nazir remains unseen, but ever present. The world they inhabit has shifted irreversibly. What follows will not be decided by who strikes first, but by who endures the weight of their choices when silence finally breaks. The reckoning, when it comes, will not be sudden. It will feel earned, shaped by patience, fear, restraint, and the slow realization that violence, once unleashed, never truly ends. And in that realization, the story prepares to move forward not toward resolution, but toward consequence.